Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep into the future of a specific, really vital area in a historic English market town, Hitchens Churchgate Regeneration Zone.
Yeah, and this isn't just guesswork, right? Our deep dive today, it's built on a whole stack of detailed reports and uh, lots of community feedback, all commissioned by North Hertz Council.
We're talking about the plans, the potential for this pretty significant 5.6-acre piece right in the heart of Hitchin.
That's the bit that includes the Churchgate Center, Hitchin Market, which everyone knows, and the car park sort of wrapped around them.
Right. And the reason this is all kind of kicking off now is that big strategic move the council made back in August 2022.
Ah, yes, when they acquired the Churchgate Center's long leasehold,
Exactly, and merged it with the freehold they already owned.
which basically gave them control over the whole shebang, the entire site. And that created this, well, unprecedented opportunity for a really joined-up redevelopment plan.
So our mission, looking at all these sources, is to cut through that detail and pull out the key insights for you. What's the plan shaping up to be? What are the hurdles?
And maybe the biggest question, how do you actually balance the history, the commercial needs, and what the community wants for a place like this?
It's a fascinating puzzle, isn't it? History, shops, people.
Absolutely. Understand the process is key, I think. And it really all started with a fundamental question the council needed answered back in 2023.
Which was?
Basically, what's the market potential here? What could this site realistically support?
Right, so that's when they brought in the consultants, Lambert Smith Hampton LSH, for that first assessment.
Precisely. That initial phase was about getting a grip on the basic realities. They looked into ownerships, potential legal headaches like restrictive covenants or existing
The
leases.
stuff that could trip things up later.
Exactly. And they did a deep dive into the planning rules, being in a conservation area, having listed buildings nearby, and especially those, well, iconic views of St. Mary's Church. How would all that impact any building work?
Those views are just so central to Hitchin's whole feel.
They really are. And the report stressed how important it is to protect them, maybe even enhance them. LSH also gave a kind of market overview for different uses, retail, leisure, housing, that sort of thing.
And tried to estimate some broad value parameters, like what might actually be viable financially.
Yeah, just trying to understand the commercial possibilities and flag any potential barriers early on.
Okay, so that initial report, the Market Assessment and Planning Overview, that landed in September 2023.
It did. And based on what it found, which they presented to the Churchgate Project Board and all the counselors, the decision was pretty clear.
That the site had potential but needed a proper plan.
Significant potential, yes.
Yeah.
But it needed a comprehensive strategy. So that led to the agreement to draw up this full regeneration investment framework, the RIF.
That sounds like the real blueprint then.
It's meant to be. And to create that framework, they knew they needed more than just a market snapshot. So they put together a multidisciplinary team in early 2024.
Bringing in more specialists.
Yeah, master planners, Leonard Design Architects, or LDA and transport experts, KMC transport planning, all working under LSH's lead.
Okay, so phase one was the market check, and then this bigger team really started digging into the site itself, the specifics, throughout 2024.
Exactly right. They kicked off several sort of interlinked studies to build a really solid baseline picture of what's actually there now. LSH updated their market stuff, naturally, but the other teams added crucial layers about the physical space and its context.
Tell me about LDA, the master planners. What did their urban design review find?
Well, they mapped out everything: street networks, building heights, public spaces, green bits, heritage features. And one of their key findings was pretty blunt, actually.
Where?
Their professional view was that the existing Churchgate Center and the market buildings, they're just not good enough quality for a historic town like Hitchin.
Wow, that's quite a statement about the current setup.
It is. They also pointed out how the big surface car parks really detract from the setting, especially around St. Mary's Church and the churchyard. Takes away from the view, the atmosphere.
But I guess they saw opportunities, too.
Oh, absolutely. A massive opportunity, in fact.
Which was?
To bring in more green and blue infrastructure, specifically to really celebrate and open up the River His. It's kind of hidden away there at the moment.
Ah, right. Make it more of a feature.
Exactly. They also noted that most buildings in the town center are quite human scale, 2 to 4 stories. And importantly, while the whole zone is in the conservation area and right next to Grade 1 and Grade 2 listed buildings,
Yes.
there are actually no listed buildings within the regeneration zone boundary itself.
Ah, Okay, so that gives a bit more flexibility on the site, potentially, as long as it respects the surroundings.
Precisely. Constraints to respect, definitely, but also some freedom to act unlocked by the site's specific situation.
Interesting. So, what did the transport review, the KMC part, add to this baseline picture?
They looked at movement, how people get around, parking, connections. A key thing they found was that the one-way system for cars around Paynes Park actually acts as a bit of a barrier.
How so?
It kind of isolates the western part of the town center, the Larage, car park area, the museum, library, Waitrose. Makes it feel a bit cut off.
Yeah, I can see that. A sort of physical disconnect.
Yes. They also looked at flood risk, low risk, from the river and the town center itself thanks to the existing defenses, but for cyclists and pedestrians.
What did they find there?
Well, parts are pedestrianized, which is good, but there's a real lack of secure cycle parking. And generally, it's not easy to walk or cycle through the site easily. Connectivity isn't great for active travel.
And did they pinpoint any specific connection that's really needed?
They did.
Huh.
Improving the link, or maybe even creating a new one between Marketplace and Queen Street, that came up as crucial for better flow and access right across the zone.
Okay, so you take all this baseline info, the buildings, the heritage, transport, the river, and you layer it all together. That leads to the SWOT analysis, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Exactly. And that process really crystallized the challenges, but also the potential.
What stood out in the weaknesses?
Well, beyond the building quality we mentioned, the SWOT pointed to those big tarmac car parks with hardly any green space. How views from places like Hollow Lane are just spoiled by parked cars. The pretty unattractive view from Marketplace into a service yard,
Not great first impressions.
not ideal. Plus, the perceived poor state of the market offer itself, and just generally how hard it is to find easy routes or walk through the site, it feels a bit blocked.
Those definitely sound like things a regeneration plan would need to tackle head on. What about the opportunity side?
This is where it gets exciting, vision-wise. Big opportunities, like opening up the river, is literally taking the concrete lid off parts of it and creating a new path along it,
That would be transformative.
wouldn't it? And introducing new, pleasant walking routes through the site, properly connecting Marketplace, the market area, Queen Street, Port Mill Lane, Bancroft, maybe even reinstating some old routes that have been lost over time.
Reconnecting the town fabric.
Yes. Plus, revitalizing the market, obviously. Building new stuff that actually fits Hitchens' character and scale, creating proper, high-quality public spaces, and seriously boosting the amount of green space and biodiversity across the whole zone.
So a lot of the weaknesses directly map onto opportunities for fixing them. What about the potential roadblocks, the threats?
Well, the ongoing reliance on car parking for the town center generally, that could clash with wanting more walking and cycling.
The parking conundrum.
Always. Existing planning rules about how much parking you have to provide could also potentially limit how much development you can actually build, which affects viability. The town's lovely historic scale, while a strength, could also limit the size of new buildings, again impacting viability. And you got to make sure all the surrounding shops and businesses can still get their deliveries easily. Servicing access is key.
It really is a balancing act, isn't it? So after all that detailed baseline work, what were the main takeaways, the big summary conclusions about the site as it is now?
The team pulled out 10 key conclusions. Things like definitely respect the character of St. Mary's and Marketplace, protect and enhance those key views, revitalize the market, make it much easier to walk through the site and along the River His, improve the river's setting by opening it up, add way more greenery, and make sure any new development has a mix of uses on the ground floor and different types of housing above.
That gives a pretty clear set of goals. But, goals are one thing, commercial reality is another. What did LSH's updated market analysis in Q3 2024 say about whether these things are actually achievable market-wise?
Right, the reality check. Their analysis put Hitchin in context regionally and nationally. The town center has about 650,000 square feet of retail space. And while, national retail trends, online shopping, cost of living have hit everywhere.
Kitchens held up relatively well.
Much better than many places, yeah. Its attractive environment seems to have provided some resilience.
And there was that striking statistic about vacancy rates.
Yes, really notable. Hitchin's retail vacancy rate was just 8.1% in late 2024. Compare that to the national average at the time, which was way up at 19.1%.
Wow, that's less than half, a really strong sign for the town center overall.
It really is. But the report was also clear. The Churchgate Center buildings themselves still need major investment. And the market, while historic and loved, also needs money spent on it, and maybe needs reshaping, right-sizing for modern shopping habits.
So potential for revitalization there, too.
Definitely. They saw strong potential, especially focusing on independent retailers and creating more flexible market spaces.
Mm.
That actually fits with national trends, where smaller businesses increasingly want flexible leases.
Okay, so the town's core retail is strong, but this specific site needs a serious upgrade.
Hmm.
What about the housing market? Residential.
Hitchin is described as a highly desirable place to live, and that translates into strong developer interest. LSH did what they call soft market testing,
Which is?
basically having discrete chats with developers, house builders, to gauge their appetite. What kind of schemes might they be interested in building here?
And the feedback.
Pretty clear confirmation. Significant interest in residential-led regeneration on this site. Housing seems key to making the whole thing stack up financially.
What kind of housing were developers suggesting?
The preference seemed to be for lower-rise stuff, typically maxing out at maybe 4 or 5 stories, integrated with the necessary parking, obviously, and decent amenity space.
Quality matter.
Absolutely. They stress that for buyers of new builds these days, high-quality communal spaces and amenities are really important differentiators. And the good news is, new build values in Hitchin are strong, with potential to grow further, especially if it's part of a really successful town center project.
So residential looks like a potential engine for the project's viability, and LSH were actively promoting this opportunity.
Yes, as part of that testing, they spoke directly with some prominent developers. They even created a glossy investment prospectus specifically for the Churchgate zone and took it to big industry events like the UCRAVE conference in May 2024 to try and attract partners.
Okay, so they've assessed the site, the planning rules, the market, developer interest, but the crucial piece, surely, is the people who actually live, work, and spend time in Hitchin. What did the community consultation tell them?
Ah, yes. This is a massive exercise and absolutely vital. A really comprehensive public consultation ran from mid-September to early November 2024, designed to get feedback from absolutely everyone possible.
How did they actually reach people? Sounds like a challenge.
They use a whole range of methods. Workshops with groups like the Community Forum, the Market Board, getting feedback from other organizations too. They ran special drop-in sessions just for the tenants in the Churchgate Center.
That's good.
Yeah. Plus, an in-person consultation hub right in the town center that was open for several weeks, a big survey online and paper copies, a specific program just for young people working with local schools, social media pushes, even a leaflet drop across the district.
Wow, that is thorough. Did they get a good response?
Very much so. Over 1,000 people visited the hub, and they got 505 completed surveys back, which is a pretty decent number.
Definitely. And all that feedback was then boiled down.
Yes. Analyzed and synthesized into 5 key conclusions about what the community really wants to see happen on that site.
Okay, what were those top 5 community priorities?
Number 1, revitalization of Hitchin Market. People want it more flexible, more community-focused, more visible, easier to get to, affordable for traders, and a better mix of stalls, permanent and casual.
That ties right back to the baseline finding that the market needs investment, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Second priority, improvement of accessibility. This covered a few things: convenient and affordable parking, yes, but also more reliable public transport and much better walking and cycling routes into and through the town center.
Parking and access again? What else?
Third, affordable housing. There was clear support from the community for ensuring a good balance of housing types and tenures, to help maintain the town's social mix and identity, not just build luxury flats.
That's an important point. And the last 2 priorities?
Fourth, community, leisure space, and entertainment. This came through really strongly. A real desire for vibrant, multi-use spaces. People mentioned things like performance areas, maybe a covered food hall, arts hubs, youth zones, even a cinema, theater, or live music venue. Lots of ideas there.
That's a big wish list. And the 5th?
Fifth was sustainable regeneration. Clearly, very important to people. They want the River His opened up. More green spaces, energy-efficient buildings, sustainable infrastructure like drainage, and much better links for walking, cycling, and public transport, putting sustainability at the heart of it.
That desire for leisure stuff, cinema, music really jumps out. And the strong push on sustainability, too. If we dig into the survey details a bit more, what did residents see as Hitchin's biggest strengths and weaknesses right now?
Well, the top strengths were pretty clear. Hitchin's historical character and its existing range of shops and services. The top weaknesses, perhaps less surprising for any town center, were parking issues and traffic congestion.
The usual suspects?
Kind of. But what's really interesting is that accessibility issues actually appeared high up on both lists' strengths and weaknesses, which suggests people value how easy Hitchin feels to get around in some ways. But there are definite frustrations, especially with cars and parking. It's nuanced.
That is interesting. What about new shops or services? What were people keenest to see?
Top of the list was specialist food stores, followed closely by a cinema, and then more cafes and restaurants.
And what was least popular?
A gym, apparently.
Yeah.
That got the lowest support among the suggested additions.
Okay. And looking ahead, if this regeneration happens, what improvements would make people actually spend more time there?
The top answers were fewer empty shops, a better range of shops overall, and an improved market.
All things this project is aiming to address, hopefully. You mentioned the emphasis on sustainability. Did the survey numbers back that up strongly?
Oh, absolutely. When they asked how important various green features were, the numbers rating them very important were really high. Energy-efficient lighting. 62.1% said very important green roof. 48.3%. Sustainable building materials. 50%. This isn't just a niche concern for a few people. It's a mainstream community priority.
Good to see that quantified. And what about the feedback specifically on the market as it is now?
Right. When asked about the current stall selection, a majority of people were either unsatisfied, very unsatisfied, or just didn't have a view, which clearly signals a desire for change and opportunity.
And what improvements did they want most for the market?
Top three were more variety of stalls, more local produce, and better food provision, things like street food, specialty food stalls.
Okay, so the community voice seems pretty clear on several key points. What about the younger residents? Did the youth engagement add anything different?
They spoke to different year groups, year 5, year 9, 6 formers. Their specific use of the market and Churchgate Center varied a bit by age, as you'd expect. But their actual suggestions often echoed the main themes. They mentioned specific shops they wanted, the desire for a cinema came up again, more green space, leisure activities, and yes, making the market better.
So, a fair bit of alignment across the age groups. Right then. We've gone from that initial commercial assessment through the really detailed look at the site itself, the constraints, the wider market picture, and now this really rich feedback from over 1,500 people. How does the report bring all of that together? What's the strategy?
Well, it leads to them setting out 5 emerging themes and development principles. These are meant to be the guiding ideas, the foundation for whatever strategy they ultimately choose for the Churchgate Regeneration Zone. It's the council's attempt to weave together all those different strands: heritage, market realities, community wishes.
Okay, so what are these 5 guiding principles?
First one, heritage-led regeneration. The thinking is obvious, really. You have to preserve Hitchin's unique character that's vital for keeping community support and pride, and essential given how sensitive the location is, right next to St. Mary's.
Makes perfect sense. That has to be number 1.
You'd think so. Second principle, mixed-use intensification. The idea here is bringing together different things: housing, shops, leisure, all in the same area. The rationale is that this supports a more diverse local economy, boosts footfall throughout the day and evening, gives you residents living right there, providing built-in customers, and generally makes the retail side more resilient.
So making sure it's a living, breathing place, not just shops or just flats.
Exactly. Third principle, market and riverfront revitalization. This speaks directly to that community feedback and the baseline studies. It's about taking those core assets, the market and the river his, and really transforming them, making them dynamic, attractive public spaces, celebrating the river, creating a destination, and supporting those independent traders everyone values.
It, again, feels like a direct response to what people said they wanted: fix the market, open up the river.
It seems to be. Fourth principle, sustainable and smart growth strategy. This means building in green infrastructure from the start, using low-carbon tech, thinking about smart mobility solutions like better cycle routes or maybe EV charging. It's about future-proofing the development against climate change, yes, but also just making it a better place to live and visit, enhancing quality of life.
And that clearly connects to the high importance the community put on sustainability in the surveys.
Absolutely. And the fifth principle, strategic development of underutilized sites. Basically, focus the new building work on areas like the existing car parks, which the earlier studies identified as, frankly, pretty poor quality spaces that detract from the views.
So concentrating the change where it's needed most and maybe least harmful to the existing historic bits.
That's the idea. It unlocks the potential for new development without messing up the core heritage areas, and it also makes it easier, potentially, to deliver the whole project in manageable phases over time.
Right. Build on the car parks first, maybe.
Mhm.
So these 5 principles are the guide rails. What actually happens next to make this real?
The report says they're now in the middle of the next step, assessing the financial viability. They're looking at different potential development options, mixes of uses based on those 5 themes, and testing if they can actually be built in a way that works financially, attracts a partner.
So running the numbers on the different ideas.
Pretty much. That high-level viability assessment kicked off in December 2024 and is happening right now.
So taking the vision and seeing if it stacks up, can it attract a developer? Does it make financial sense?
Precisely. The council's big picture goal, they state, is to really lift Hitchin's profile and attraction as a place to live, work, shop, and visit. And they're explicitly saying they want development partners who get that vision, who understand the nuances of doing this kind of heritage-led project properly.
And is there any kind of timeline for when we might see things becoming, well, more concrete? A partner chosen, perhaps?
The timeline sketched out in the report suggests they plan to start the process of actually selecting a development partner in the second half of 2025, so later this year. But, and it's an important but,
Yes.
that's all subject to those viability appraisals being finished and looking positive, and the council formally deciding on their preferred way forward, how they actually want to deliver the project, the structure of the deal, etc.
So still some careful steps to go, making sure the plan is not just desirable, but actually deliverable.
Exactly. It's been quite a journey through these documents, hasn't it? From checking the initial market pulse, through those incredibly detailed studies of the site and its context, grappling with the hard commercial realities for shops and housing, and then, crucially, laying out all those detailed hopes and concerns gathered directly from, well, from you, the people of Hitchin.
It really does hammer home just how complex planning something like this is. A major town center regeneration. You're trying to carefully slot new development into this much-loved historic setting.
While meeting community desires that sometimes pull in different directions, more leisure versus affordable housing, for instance.
Right. And balancing all that with market realities, making sure the whole thing is financially viable so it actually gets built, and doing it sustainably while respecting the history.
Phew. And a proper multidimensional challenge. It needs input from so many different angles, different types of expertise, different perspectives.
It really does. And it leaves us, and you listening, with a really interesting question to chew on, I think, as we look towards Hitchin's future. You've got this really strong public support we saw for specific things, the cinema idea, a revamped market with more variety in food, that high priority on sustainability.
And alongside that, you've got the commercial realities developers leaning towards residential to make schemes viable, the need for flexible shop spaces, the constraints of the site.
Exactly. So the big question is, how will the council and whoever they eventually partner with actually weave all these different threads together, these demands, these opportunities? What ultimately does become the priority when these factors maybe clash or compete? And how will those choices shape the final vision for what could be a genuinely resilient, vibrant, and sustainable future for the Churchgate Regeneration Zone and for Hitchin Town Center as a whole?